In his iconic novel 1984, George Orwell predicted a dystopian future ruled by an oppressive, pervasive, and omnipresent surveillance state. But as the saying goes, truth can be stranger than fiction, and here in the real world, a new kind of big brother may be emerging. It's called biometric surveillance, and it's been around for years with fingerprint scans, DNA databases, and facial recognition software. But as the tech improves, so too does its use in solving crimes. We've already seen that in action, like when DNA data from the genealogy site GEDmatch helped police crack the Golden State Killer case, and when police in Maryland used facial recognition software to help identify the man who shot and killed 5 people at the Capital Gazette newspaper. But such surveillance extends far beyond those high-profile cases. In fact, the FBI has access to more than 640 million photos that can be searched using facial recognition technology, including driver's licenses, passports, and mugshots, according to the Government Accountability Office. It's a clear win for investigators, but increasingly questions are being raised about privacy concerns. Just last week, the Somerville City Council voted to become the second city in the country after San Francisco to ban the use of such software in police investigations and municipal surveillance programs. And the American Civil Liberties Union is calling for a nationwide moratorium on facial recognition surveillance. Is a full ban the right way to go? The director of the Technology for Liberty program at the ACLU of Massachusetts, Kade Crockford, joins me now. Hey, Kade.
Hey, how are you?
Can you start off by telling me how pervasive or widespread this technology is locally at this point in time?
Well, part of the problem is we don't actually know, because this technology has been, to this point, deployed largely in secret behind closed doors. And that's a really significant problem, because this particular type of surveillance, facial recognition, poses unprecedented threats to our privacy and civil liberties. It's problematic when it doesn't work, and it's problematic when it does. So there have been studies at MIT, for example, right here in the Boston area, that have shown that there's pretty serious racial and gender bias in the algorithms themselves, with up to 35% error rates on black women, whereas the technology works almost 100% well on white men. But even if it does work accurately, which at this point it really doesn't, it's not ready for prime time, there are a whole host of civil liberties concerns raised by the use of these tools by the government. This technology enables government agencies to track us not just on one day and not just one person, but every single person on every single day through all of our public movements, whether we're going to an abortion clinic, to a cannabis store, to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, to worship our religion.
To an Occupy Boston
Exactly.
rally, possibly.
Exactly.
So just so I'm clear, if we don't know how widespread it is, are there certain examples of cases where it is being used locally that we do know about? I mean, I'm thinking of that program Clear, which is at Logan Airport, which lets you actually, before you tell me other examples of this at play in the Boston area, let's take a look at a Clear commercial making the case for why, from Clear's vantage point, this is a force for good.
All his life, Jimmy's had to get in line and show his ID, and get in line and show his ID, and get in line and show his ID, just to prove he's Jimmy. That is, until Jimmy found Clear. Now he is his ID, so all Jimmy needs to speed through security at airports, stadiums, and more is Jimmy.
And as I understand it, I haven't used it, but at Logan, these are in place right now, and you can go and you can avoid the ID portion of the line and just skip ahead to the baggage check. So they're at Logan. Where else might we run into this, whether it's visible or not?
So I definitely have some issues with that, which we can get to if you want. But that's an opt-in service.
Yes.
So everybody who uses that is fully aware that they are giving their biometric data, which you cannot ever change, right, unless you get facial recognition changing surgery, like a nose job or a face job. Everyone's opting into that system.
Just like with the Apple iPhone X,
That's right. The programs that we know that are in use by government in Massachusetts right now are not opt-in. They are programs including a facial recognition program at the Registry of Motor Vehicles, which has been in use since 2006. And the RMV has allowed law enforcement to use since 2006. That's extremely problematic, because every person who goes to get a driver's license has no idea that this is happening, has no idea that they're effectively entering their face into a database that can be searched against by law enforcement agencies here in Massachusetts, and even potentially federal agencies like ICE or Customs Border Patrol. There's a second use case that we know of, which is that the state police also has a facial recognition system in a statewide information sharing database they call CopLink. That system checks images against 4 million mugshots that are in the state police's database. Now, a critical problem with this, besides the secrecy, is that there's never been any legislative authorization for any use of this technology in Massachusetts. That's the case nationwide. There is not a single statute on the books in the U.S. that protects people's civil rights and civil liberties with respect to the use of these tools. No checks and balances, no guidelines, no judicial oversight, nothing whatsoever. So again, the technology is not ready for prime time. It doesn't even really work yet. And despite that, we've been seeing government agencies, largely in secret, deploying these technologies for up to 13 years in this state.
Before we talk about the legislation that is currently being considered at the State House and maybe about the Somerville ban, I feel like to get a sense of how this could be used for ill, it might be beneficial to talk about how it's being used abroad. Right now I'm thinking of China, I'm thinking of Dubai. Can you just run through how it's being used in those places?
So in Shanxi province in China, the Chinese government, the PRC, is using facial recognition technology in pretty much the most dystopian way imaginable. They have set up a network of surveillance cameras all over cities and towns in that province, effectively to create a net of control to monitor and control the Uyghur population, which is a Muslim minority population that the Chinese government is very, frankly, hostile to.
Yeah. They have them in something resembling
concentration camps. Yeah, exactly. So this technology is extremely effective as a dystopian form of social and political control to wield against, minority populations. And that's what we're seeing happen in China. So that type of use, the use case of turning every surveillance camera in Massachusetts into one of those tracking devices that facilitates tracking of every single person's movements and associations in real time and historically, is actually not happening in Massachusetts to our knowledge, which is a good thing.
So knock on wood.
Yeah, exactly.
For the
so what we believe is the right solution at the ACLU is for us to press pause, to say, okay, you know what, this has been unrolled without the public's knowledge, without any legislative authorization. We are seeing it deployed in places like China in a way that is fundamentally authoritarian and dangerous to civil rights. So the correct approach in Massachusetts should be to say, let's press pause. Let's have a moratorium on the government's use of this technology right now. And that gives us the space that we need to have the debate about whether, if at all, this technology should be used in our society, and if so, allows us to create the appropriate regulations and rules so that it's not abused.
So there are two bills, right? One House, one Senate bill, I think basically equivalent, that are under consideration right now. Governor Baker, if I remember correctly, seemed to be under the impression that there was federal regulation going on this front that is not actually going on.
No.
Do you have any sense, just briefly, of what the prospects of this legislation that would do exactly what you're talking about, are those going to pass and become law?
We sure hope so. So if you agree, you should go to aclum.org/presspause and contact your legislators, because it is critical, again, that, before the horse really gets out of the barn here, we want to make sure that we are not letting the technology dictate what our rights ought to look like in the 21st century, that we are walking into the 21st century with clear eyes and making sure that those, really dangerous use cases that we're seeing in places like China do not unfold on the streets in Massachusetts.
Kade Crockford, thank you for being here. Always good to have you.
Thanks a lot.